There are way too many of the leaders in our world that see war as their best option right now to get rid of surplus population, to get countries back into debt, to try and re-inspire loyalty among their population. And certainly that's true here in the United States of America. But behind all of it, and we need to be aware of this in the next couple of weeks, Israel is desperate to get the war between the United States and Iran going just in the next few weeks. Because after the end of the year, if there's no major war, then all those Americans who are in Iraq they have to leave Iraq. The government of Iraq has kicked them out. And after that happens, the road from Tehran to Tel Aviv for a counterattack, for a retaliation, is going to be wide, wide open. Iraq is not going to get in the way of Iran. If Israel attacks Iran, Iraq isn't going to step in and protect them. And so Israel's desperate to start a war. They apparently have started Cast Lead 2 in Gaza. The soldiers intruded into the buffer zone. It resulted in violence. Now it's brought in airstrikes. The Palestinians are fighting back. Israel's saying, how dare they fight back? Look, they're behaving badly again. Well, yeah, you started shooting at them. And so that's escalating. Now Israel's trying to restart the war in Lebanon. They've got one of their fake front terror groups flinging fireworks rockets over the border. And Obama's out there saying, oh, yes, we must defend Israel. Okay, Obama, you got 2 daughters. Put them in the green baggy stuff and give them some parachutes and let them go. But I'm going to tell you this right now. For my New Year's resolution, anybody who wants a war, they're the first ones to go to the front line and catch the bullets. No more of this people sitting back here and saying, I think your children should go fight a war. We've had enough of that. It's time for that to go away. Our children are not to be sold as slaves into the military service of a foreign power. No more. Yeah, Gaza under fire. Israel air assault claims civilian lives. Israel is saying they're shooting, or they're bombing rather, Hamas training camps. Okay, Hamas is the legitimate government of Gaza and Palestine. What Israel's bombing are schools. We have photos from the last Cast Lead where Israel was dropping white phosphorus onto Palestinian schools. That's what Israel means when they call it a Hamas training camp. Yeah, Hamas runs them. They're training the kids to read, write, do art, music, learn history. That's what's going on over here. Now, NATO has informed Israel that they will not intervene in the Syria crisis. Syria is also the victim of some of these agents provocateurs being sent in to try and topple the government. This is the big play. This is the big play with Israel and the United States trying to conquer all of the Middle East for Eretz Israel. And when it blows up, as it did already in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's going to be your kids who are expected to go in and bleed and die for greater Israel. I think it's a really stupid idea. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Newt Gingrich, who hardly a day goes by, but he's just out there proving more and more why we should just do our best to just get him out of the race here. Over at Haaretz, they're basically proclaiming that he's forged this alliance with this very powerful Jewish fundraiser, financier person here, Jewish mogul Adelson, forged firm alliance. Isn't this the United States of America? Wouldn't you like to see stories about how these politicians are going around trying to get the American vote, trying to get American donors? And Jon Stewart was absolutely right, with the exception of Ron Paul. All of the GOP candidates are running around obsessed with the Jewish vote and Jewish funding and Israel this and Israel that. So it hardly comes as a surprise that this week Newt Gingrich has taken on yet another one of Israel's many propaganda tools to justify their theft of Palestinians' lands. He's saying the Palestinians are an invented people. They didn't really exist. They're simply made up to justify depriving Israel of their rightful heritage. Forgetting that most of the Israelis are actually Ashkenazi, who are descended from converted Khazars in Central Asia. And they are not the descendants of the biblical Hebrews. being of Sephardic descent, I actually have more Hebrew blood in me than most of Israel's government. One of those little historical ironies. But, okay, Newt Gingrich is out there saying there is no Palestine as a state. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. The Palestinian people have just been invented out of nothing. They're just Arabs. They're part of the Arab community. And they should just go someplace else in Arabia. And once again, Newt Gingrich is proving, first of all, that he's a whore for Israel, and that he's utterly ignorant of history. Because specific references to Palestine as a place go back 500 years before the time of Jesus. In the 5th century BC, Herodotus wrote about Palestine many times. Translation goes, they live in the coastal parts of Syria, and that region of Syria and all that lies between it and Egypt is called Palestine. A 100 years later, in the mid-4th century BC, Aristotle mentions it. Again, if, as is fabled, there is a lake in Palestine, such that if you bind a man or beast and throw it in, it floats and does not sink. They say that this lake is so bitter and salt that no fish live in it, and that if you soak clothes in it and shake them, it cleans them. It's talking about the Dead Sea. So Aristotle was talking about Palestine in the 4th century BC. In the mid-2nd century BC, the ancient geographer Polemon wrote of a place not far from Arabia in the part of Syria called Palestine. Israel's whole excuse for taking Palestine is it doesn't really exist. And yet we have found time and time again maps of that region of the world going back to the 16th, 15th, 14th centuries that show Palestine, but nothing called Israel. Somebody actually just sent me this wonderful little graphic. It is a cover from a piece of sheet music from the 1920s called Lena from Palestina. There is no question Palestine has been there all along. It is not the Arabs who are trying to wipe Israel off the map. It's Israel that's trying to wipe Palestine off the map. They're not real. They never really existed. They're not humans. They're Untermenschen, or whatever it is they're going to say. And again, you are ruled and controlled by lie after lie after lie after lie. We live in an age of lies. We are enslaved by lies. We are tricked by lies. We are controlled by lies. We are surrendering our wealth to lies. We're surrendering the lives of our children to lies. We need to stand up and say, no more lying. I will have a truthful government, or I will have no government at all, is what we should all be saying right now. When we, the people, have the moral courage to go into our government buildings and grab the liars and hurl them down the steps so that they bounce 3 or 4 times into the streets, followed by a good coating of tar and feathers, and run out of town on a rail. When we, the people, have the strength to make the cost of a lie outweigh its benefit, then, and only then, will our government discover that truth is a virtue. And they're not going to discover it 1 second before. We have a government that has survived for over a century on lies and deception, and they don't know any other way. That's why they hate the internet so much. They love a world where lies rule, where deception reigns, where fraud holds sway over the masses. They see those of us out here on the internet, the alternative media, we're the heretics. We refuse to believe as we're told to believe. They need to silence us, if not burn us at the stake. They need to go back to a world ruled by lies and deception. lies about invisible men in the clouds, lies about the goodness of bankers, lies about the rightness of wars of conquest. Our government lied to us about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, and despite this, they're still trying to tell us lies about Iran's weapons of mass destruction. They're habitual, uncontrollable, unrepentant liars. They are either absolutely convinced that you don't remember the previous lies, or they think you're stupid enough to fall for the same lie a second time. The fact that they're even trying betrays an absolute, complete lack of respect to you, the American people. I mean, you all know when somebody lies to somebody else, it's a sign of complete disrespect. We have a government that does not respect the American people, does not treat us with fairness and honor and dignity. We are chattel to be lied to. Whatever gets us to do what the government wants us to do, that's the morality. Lie, cheat, steal, kill, torture, threaten, bluff, whatever works. We have a government of the liars, by the liars, and for the liars. And I think it's time for it to come to an end.